Welcome back to our podcast. My name is Tiffany Herlin, a licensed clinical social worker. And today I'm interviewing from Discovery Ranch South Residential Program, Lee Bingham, the equine director, and Rochelle Stubbs. She's a licensed clinical mental health counselor and the associate clinical director. Today in this episode, we will be discussing equine therapy and how it can help a student gain deeper insight into their therapeutic journey. Thanks for coming today, ladies.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. As I was telling you guys before we started that I've got lots of experience myself in equine therapy as a therapist at my last program I worked at, and it's one of my favorite things. Like, I've got passion, and I'm sure you do too, which is why we're here.
That's why we're here.
It's Rochelle's best hour and a half of her week. So.
Yeah, that's what I like to say. It's the best hour and a half of my week.
It really is. Like, I always looked forward to it. We had groups, and so we'll dive into it. So tell me each a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into what equine therapy even is.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm Lee. I actually grew up in Cedar. It was my hometown. My grandpa bought a ranch in the 50s. And so we run horses and cattle, livestock. It's always been a part of just who I am in my everyday life. And that led me into junior high, high school, and collegiate rodeo. And I did that at some national levels and competitions in that genre of the horse world. But as I was going to school, I got my degree in psychology. So this job really created just like the dream job for me. It brought all of my loves, all of my passions into one, and was really thankful. It's a long story. That'll be another podcast. How I ended up at DRS. That's a whole nother story. But just really thankful and grateful to be a part of this industry and be able to watch horses in this light. I know we'll get into this, but I would just say my most humbling experience for me going into this field was seeing a horse on a level that I never gave them enough credit for.
They're miraculous creatures. Like beautiful.
Absolutely.
And when you throw in therapy, it's just, you just have so much more awe for these powerful, beautiful creatures. Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Lee.
You're welcome.
So I'm the associate clinical director. I have been at Discovery Ranch South for 7 years, almost exactly 7 years. Really, I came to DR. I've been a therapist since, I don't know, for like 16 years.
Forever.
Oh yeah, for like forever. I've always worked with adolescents. I love adolescents. I actually came to Discovery Ranch South because of Lee. Lee and I, with like our big joke, we've known each other since elementary school.
Oh, so you guys knew each other before.
Yeah,
that's even cooler.
And it gets better. I mean, it does. And so, so we've known each other for our whole lives pretty much. And so Lee, shared with me that they were looking for a new therapist, and I toured once and said, this is my place. When can I start? Mm-hmm. But of course, the equine program is what drew me there. So much like Lee, my family is in the cattle industry, right? I'm 6th generation out of Cedar. And
I'm only 5.
Yeah, I'm one up.
Only 5.
Yeah. So it's important to me. And so, I've rode horses. I've been around horses. I've been around livestock my entire life. And so, as I got like more involved in my career and in adolescence and in different type of therapy, the equine therapy always drew me, to the horses and what can I learn and what can I do. And so knowing that Discovery Ranch South had this equine program, it really made me want to work there. And I've loved it ever since. And so,
your senior's thesis.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
So you guys were just made for this job.
Yes.
And we had capstone classes together at SU.
So cool.
So with my rodeo, I started at UNLV. I transferred to Weber State University, but then I got married, and so my last year I actually moved home back to Cedar and finished there. And so we actually had some capstone classes together.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay. Which is gotta make what you do even more powerful, because you have a relationship, you have trust, which is really what you need in an arena with a horse too.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Oh, that's so cool.
So, yeah, and our cattle ranches we're probably closer neighbors on the mountain with, like our cabins than we are in town. So. Yeah.
And for those who don't live out in the country, when they say close, it's not close. If you live in the city, close is like down the block. For you guys, it's like, 15 minutes across the mountain.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I know your lingo.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. What exactly is equine therapy? If you were a first-time listener, and we have a parent listening or anyone, and they have no idea what that even means, can you give us a Reader Digest version of it? I know you could talk a lot longer than an hour about it, but
for sure,
shorten it down a little.
For sure. I mean, I look at there's a definition, just the equine therapy definition of using the horse to, help with any kind of emotional mental health, any type of, you can, I don't know, it's therapy, right? So to me, it's just that you use a horse to use therapy.
As we've prepared for this and talked about this, I think equine therapy, the biggest things for us is, what stands out the most is you get to see a kid in a different light. You get to see a kid in where I think their best selves come out. I think their heart, their soul, their passions, and maybe what has been lost as they've been through, their traumas and their attachment, depression, anxiety. I think equine therapy starts to fold those layers back and get to who they were or who they want to become. And the horse is just on that journey with them.
That's a beautiful explanation. And yeah, I agree. It just allows for students to gain deeper insight into what they're already talking about in session in the office and just applying it. I mean, which is why we're talking about this, because the episode before I met with your clinical director, Jennifer,
She's
and
so
we
great.
just talked about what
awesome.
experiential therapy is. And I mean, that's what it is it's helping clients make those aha moments, make those connections, feel safe, feel like they can make even more progress than just talking about it.
For sure.
So what does that look like? Help our listeners envision that. Like, are they getting on a horse? Are they, what are they doing?
All of the above.
Okay.
Right. At Discovery Ranch, we do ride as well as the groundwork. But I think at Discovery, the horse is the therapist. We're just facilitating. Right. And I think I do my best work when I let that horse do their work. Sometimes that's hard because you may know the kid, you may know what the target behaviors are, you may know what that kid is struggling with, and sometimes you want to jump in too soon, too early, and too prematurely. And if I let that horse guide the session and I let the horse just do what they naturally do organically because they love it and because they love to change lives, and I know that wholeheartedly with our team of horses now, because there are some that did not want to be there and they definitely threw the red flag and they said, this work is not for me.
The horse. Yeah.
Right? And so with our team now, if they guide and they lead that session, they just tee everything up where we're able to ask their questions in the right way.
Well, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but the horses mirror the kids in the arena who they're paired with. Our equine director always used to joke with me because I'd come into the arena and, as you know, I've got a big personality and a lot of energy, and I'd be like, wow, the horse is really ramped up today. He's like, oh, they were fine till you got here.
Right,
Like,
right.
what's that supposed to mean,
For sure.
But I learned through this process that the horses mirror the boys or the girls. I worked with boys, so
Client,
the student that they work with, and that was fascinating to me to learn about. And then I also learned as a therapist that I would go and have a task set up that we were going to do, and then sometimes it would go a completely different direction. And so, like you said, letting the horse organically guide that is so essential. Am I off there at all?
No,
or?
I 100% believe in the mirroring. They do, but I believe it's deeper than that.
Okay.
I believe they do mirror. They allow the client to they do mirror, and they allow the client to see their strengths and their struggles. But then they go deeper, and I think they want to help them on that journey to better themselves. And so the mirroring happens, but I also think there's this piece of guidance from them, or this ability for them to surface what maybe has been a challenge for them to accept. And the horse has a way of allowing that acceptance to be taken in a way that they want to change. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think their ability just to take this kid and almost, hey, this kid needs to be challenged with this. So I'm going to challenge I'm gonna challenge them with. I'm gonna push their boundaries just a little bit today because I can tell that's kind of what they need. Or we have one horse, highly anxious horse, and for some reason, all the anxious kids always choose this horse.
The mirroring, right?
That's not a surprise.
The mirroring
So
comes
it's totally
in,
the
right?
mirroring, and then it's teaching, but once the kid is regulated, you watch the horse just regulate with them. And so, yeah, it's just really cool experience.
Just some ability of, and it goes into our mission statement, right? This nurture challenge, this balance between nurturing and challenge, and we have embraced that from 2013 when we began at Discovery Ranch South, and I was so lucky to be a part of that team that built this program. And that horse, they just know. They know when to do what. Like, do I embrace this kid in a hug today? Or do I dig deep because I know the potential of that kid, and I'm going to help them seek what is in there, and that's the guidance that I feel. Like I said, I know I'm repeating myself.
No,
but
I love it.
my best work is letting that horse lead the session.
With any experiential therapy, it's more powerful when you're there and you experience it. It's harder to explain. But,
I agree.
So hard to get parents to really understand unless they're there and experiencing it. But we had this one student that I worked with who was really stubborn on the spectrum, very black or white, I like to call like rock brain, would get really stuck and was either all or nothing. And whenever they were doing well, they were doing awesome. And when they were doing terrible, they would rip up their therapy in their binder and have this giant fit and then like plop down and like be like, I'm not doing anything.
Right.
And so we took this kid out into the arena and worked with this one horse that was also very stubborn. And he had to get this horse over a log, not a big jump, just a log. And he didn't have to ride it. He just had to lead it over the log. Now this horse would not go. But this kid who was maybe 80 pounds, like tiny kid, was trying. I actually even took a picture and sent it to his mom. And he was, if I could paint it for you, he was trying to pull on the horse on the reins. And that horse just stood there. And you could see the log, and it was seriously like a foot away. And all the horse had to do was step over that log and just stood there and looked at this kid. And this kid was just like full body weight leaning back. And I sent that picture to his mom, and she's like, that is my boy. Yeah. That's exactly what he does.
I'm that horse.
Yeah. And I'm the horse is, doing exactly what he does. And all he had to do was ask for help and lead from behind to get the horse to go over. And it took him like a whole hour, and he was frustrated and angry and melted down. And we talked about how does this relate to him? And he had this aha moment of, I'm that horse. Oh my gosh, this is what I do. And how my parents must feel, and my therapist and my peers. And it was just this cool moment of like, and it was a simple walk the horse over a log. Like that was it. But it was just so cool how the horse led him to this insight of like, this is what you do. This is your MO.
We have that horse at Discovery. Her name is Carmel, and I don't know one kid that has worked with her that hasn't used the word stubborn at some time or another. I love
other words too, but
right, yes, absolutely.
Stubborn.
But I love when they use that word. It just allows us to dive in because it's about the communication, it's about the respect, it's about how they're approaching the relationship. It's all of that, but all they can see is this horse is stubborn, and there's just so much therapeutic work there. And so I love when they use that word. It just, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is great. This is what we want.
Yeah, this is perfect. We're going down the right.
We're going down the right road. We're going down the right path. And they're getting to those aha moments that are they're just so profound. They're life-changing. They can be life-changing. I really believe they can be life-changing. These horses have the ability to change lives. When they want to take them home with them, they've made an impact.
Yeah.
They're trying to decide how they could convince
how they can convince their parents to get their horse.
I've had
to
one
their
of those
house.
moments with horses. Like, how can I have a horse myself? I've been there
for sure. And it's even it's even more rewarding to watch that journey when it is a kid that will come in and say, I am not doing equine.
Yeah, I hate horses.
I hate horses.
Yeah,
it's
scary.
fear. It's scared. It's they've had an experience with a horse that, they didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
They didn't feel comfortable. They've been bucked off. Something has happened.
Yeah.
In a situation
had
where
trauma.
they've had trauma, and so they're very hesitant, or they don't believe in equine therapy. I had one kid they stomped up to me the first day. They told me their name. They stomped up to me and they looked at me right in the eye and said, "I'm not doing equine therapy." And I'm like, "That's okay." And that week, it was a really hard week. We actually had to put a horse down that week. It was one of the toughest weeks at DR that I've had. He was one of the best horses that we've had come through there, and I remember that the kid admitted on a Monday, and I think this was probably Wednesday. We had a group, so the kids could say goodbye. And so many kids worked with that horse. He had so many impactful relationships, and they all stood up. They shared their journey with him. They shared just how much he meant to them. They shared how much they had changed their lives. It was real and it was genuine. And that after that group, the same kid came up to me and they said, "I wanna do your equine therapy. I wanna be a part of this." And it was just the horses and the peers that changed it. I said nothing other than, "It's okay if you don't want to do equine therapy. I'm not making you."
Just held space for them.
Space.
That's the best kind of change, is when they choose and their peers and the things around them facilitate them to want to change, rather than us coming in and saying, "You need to change."
Yeah.
Well, I think that makes so much sense, as we talk about experiential programs and experiential therapy, and equine is such a big part of what we do experientially, that it's always holding that space, because I feel like we can, the experiential part, and I think especially equine, we have a lot of time, right, and patience, and there's not a lot of pushing to do this or pushing to do that.
Yeah.
It's, hey, okay, like, we're gonna give you some choice, right? And we want these kids to come in and feel safe. We want them to come in and feel confident. And so being able to, like, okay, yeah, you don't want to do equine, all right, and chances are, we know, right, because of our trust in it, and because of how much we love it, that they'll come around.
Yeah.
And you're right. Once they've made up their mind, they're in.
Yeah.
Right.
What a beautiful thing, because that's probably not what they're used to coming to your program. It's like they've been told, pushed, you need to change, what you're doing is not right,
Yeah,
so to have this safe environment with not only you guys who are, maybe authoritative figures, and then these big, powerful creatures to be like, "Oh, yeah, you're safe here, and we're going to let you make the choices." So this is...
Can I just say on that,
please.
their first session, their very, very first equine session is choosing their horse.
Okay.
So it is not a relationship that we are picking for them, that we are forcing them towards or pushing them towards. It is let's go meet the team. And who do you want to build a relationship with? Who may you connect with? Who stood out to you today? Did you relate to any of the horses today? And that first session can be so telling. Just this last week, I had a kid come down, has been struggling in some other departments. They come to their first equine session, and they pick a horse that a boundary pusher. You give this horse an inch, he's going to take a mile.
Those are fun.
Yeah, they are.
He bites, he nips, he's in their space. He's a younger horse. His maturity is not quite as high as some of our go-to rocking horse grandpa.
Right.
On
the ones
on the
that
front
you're
porch
like,
rocking horse grandpa horses.
Set
right.
anyone on them, they're fine.
Right. And this kid, they said, I want to work with Martin. And I said, why'd you choose Martin? Can you tell me, what is it about Martin? And this kid's answer just said, it was simple. It was said, this horse is misunderstood.
Oh.
Right. So they'd heard in the milieu what he was. He's this, he's that, he pushes, he bites, he nips, he's kind of, you have to watch your toes, you have to be safe, he doesn't always respect you, right? It's all the things that this kid had heard. Well, this kid is talking about themselves, right? When they're saying this, they're misunderstood, right? They had the experience without any input from anyone else what Martin meant to them, what connection they had, what interaction that they had. And we're 3 sessions in now. And I was just telling Rochelle on the way up this morning, and this kid has horse experience, so they have some knowledge in how to let the horse know what's okay, what's not okay. They have the ability to do it respectfully and safely. But he has turned a corner. Sometimes what takes months for him with other students, he is treating this student with a lot of respect and kindness and care. He's not being himself. He's meeting that kid where they're at, right? He's mirroring and meeting that kid where they're at. And to see that kid in equine is absolutely it melts my heart. It just gives you those cold chills, because again, it's what is inside that kid deep down. And maybe that kid has gone through all of these moments of what they're doing wrong, right? Or being told they're not good enough. They're not, it's so much focus. This kid's been in treatment for a while, right? There's so much focus on what is going wrong, what you're not doing right. And if I can just have that moment in equine to let them know you are worth it. Mm-hmm. You are doing great things. You're making eye contact with the horse. He's respecting you. And just as I was telling this kid, they just looked at me and they just, like, their shoulders just collapsed and they just said, "Thank you."
Beautiful. Because that student is doing what all of our clients need, is for someone to see them differently than what they see themselves as and others.
Sure.
And then when you start treating someone differently and see it in them, their potential, and look for the positive versus the negative, it gives them an opportunity to live up to that and become that, which is what it sounds like with this horse. So what a beautiful example. And honestly, what we all could use in our lives, right? Sometimes we limit ourselves and pigeonhole ourselves according to our core beliefs that sometimes aren't always accurate.
Sure.
So. Or the messages you've received for years, right?
Yes.
Even though they're subtle or no one means to tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
these messages that
nonverbal, right, that you receive, right? Absolutely.
And I think about that, like, that's therapy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I even think about, you talk about kids choosing horses. Well, they might choose this horse because they look really nice, or they're really pretty, or that horse walked away from me and I'm going to chase it, right? Like, wow, that's a big therapeutic issue, right? I mean, everything's therapy.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So no matter what they do, we can turn that into, how's that like your relationships, right? How's that like your relationship with your parents or your friends? What does that look like?
So amazing what that first session can even unfold.
Yeah. Do they ever change their horses along the way?
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. So so we have 3 tiers of equine at Discovery. Our ground's our fundamental program, and that is mainly working with them on the ground. And the goal of that is, number one, that they feel safe. Mm. A lot of these kids don't have any horse experience at all, or they've had traumatic or experiences that did not go well for them. And so that's my main goal in grounds, that they can feel safe. And yes, we're working on, how to safely holder, how to, be with your horse, groom your horse, communication, boundaries, all of those things are definitely happening. But if we can get them to feel safe, confident, that they're ready to ride when we move into our second tier, our horsemanship groups. And so that's really shifted when we went to natural lifemanship. Mm-hmm. Natural lifemanship is the umbrella that we follow, we use. I'm level 1 trained. Rochelle's going to get level 1 trained this year. I'm going to go on to level 2. But natural lifemanship is all about relationship, which is what Discovery Ranch South is about. Is all about relationships. So I'd been seeking this equine therapeutic, piece. What is natural life? What do we
like a
call
theory.
A theory.
The certification.
Yeah, certification.
Yeah.
And my first training in natural lifemanship, within the first hour, I could just feel, kind of when Rochelle came to the ranch, like you can just feel, this is what I've been looking for. This
different
is going
than
to help
the
me.
EGALA.
Yes.
Yeah, it's different than the EGALA model.
Yeah, absolutely.
Model.
EGALA was a lot of metaphors.
Okay.
A lot of pulling, this horse represents this person in my life, or that horse represents that person. It just didn't feel natural or organic to me, like the natural lifemanship. Mm-hmm. it just fit. It just fit like a glove, exactly what we do at Discovery Ranch, and it was really easy to dive into natural lifemanship. And then it goes into a lot of work with Bruce Perry and trauma.
So who is the ideal client for equine therapy?
I think our ideal client is, as we've talked about this a lot, right? Because I think it's really easy to say everyone's our ideal client, like anyone who has anything. But when I think about the kind of students that we have and that we've had, and just looking over all of them, I mean, we can work. Equine therapy can work with so many different issues or challenges, right? From our kids who come in, with attachment challenges, we can work with that, right? Let's teach these kids how to build trust, have a healthy relationship, right? We work with kids with trauma, right? We can teach a lot of different things, even just the regulation piece, co-regulation
versus react.
Yeah, responding versus reacting. Kids who are highly dysregulated and anxious and depressed, work with a lot of that. I think, we were even talking about like identity on the way up here, because we think about kids who are struggling to figure out who they are,
or what their values
or what
are.
their value, their value, like their personal value. And it's just easy to look at these horses, don't really have any judgment, right? They're going to meet you where you're at. They see you as a person. They want to, we feel like the horses there, the team we have at the Discovery Ranch definitely, wants to help. Mm-hmm. And so I really think there is so many, I haven't really met, even kids on the spectrum, right? You can do so many different things, right?
Yeah.
But like nonverbal, like teaching them how to read nonverbal.
Well, and it's so much easier and safer to build a relationship with an animal that's not going to reject you. And you don't have all these complicated, trying to read the room. I mean, you can learn how to read the nonverbals in a safe way.
Yes.
Whereas like with another human being, that's scary. And, their brains aren't always wired for that. So I loved working with kids on the spectrum with horses.
For sure. I mean, we've had that the last couple of weeks. We have a student right now who, I mean, that's kind of at the end when we process during group. Let's talk about nonverbals today. Okay, yeah, this is what I saw. When their ears went like this and their eyes were like this, I knew that they were kind of frustrated with me. Okay, cool. Like, what do you need to do next time? Or what are you doing? So I think there's
the cool part of that story. It's one of Rochelle's clients, but several months ago, I remember challenging. The kid came in with a ton of horse experience, and their riding ability was top notch. But their ability to read what the horse was trying to communicate was definitely a challenge for them. And when we brought that up the first time, this kid was frustrated with us, mad, shut down, disengaged, did not want to talk about it. For a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yes.
I think was just processing and chewing on that. But once that kid allowed that feedback, and then coming back to the following sessions to allow that horse to talk to them in a way that I don't think they had the ability. I just don't think they had ever opened the door to, man, what is this horse truly saying? What does this horse need? And what is this horse actually trying to communicate to me? It's been one of my funnest stories to, or journeys to watch. We just had session yesterday, and it was profound. This kid was like, "Oh, this horse was so frustrated the first time I got on it this morning. It didn't want anything to do with me, right?" And if I would have said that 2 months ago, that would have went. The kid wouldn't have related to that at all. And so,
and I also have to say, lessons we learn in equine or things that we go over in equine group, in our group therapy, it translates back to individual, right? Or translates back to family.
Absolutely.
So, we have a kid who has, maybe some neurodiversity and struggles reading, nonverbals. Well, it's really cool. Then we can kind of take that into our individual sessions and let's talk about nonverbal cues of horses. Let's talk about nonverbal cues with people. How, what can we do? What do you need to learn? So and taking it back, right? And even kids who struggle, I mean, I just think kind of on the same topic or whatever, you have these kids who struggle with their relationships and setting boundaries with their horses and being able to say, hey, this feels like a familiar pattern, right? When you're pushing people away, where do you see that play out in your life, right? And it's so cool because you're watching it play out in the arena. Or like, hey, when you treat someone this way, because we do have kids who get frustrated and walk away, and I'm never talking to this horse again. Give me another. I need to ride a different horse. This horse is stupid. I hate it. All right, cool. Well, let's talk about that, right? There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And this is how you respond to relationships, right? This is how you respond to things when things don't go your way, or when you don't like, or you feel pushed away, you feel rejected. Let's talk about that. And so it's just so cool you can take that back and talk about it individual, talk about it in your family therapy.
Which, again, takes it to an even deeper level. Because it's one thing to be like, hey, you frustrate your peers, or your mom and dad feel this way. Yeah. But you get them into the arena, and you get them working with the horses, and they see it play out.
It's undeniable.
It's so much easier to go back in session and be like, hey, how do you think your parents feel when you do A, B, or C?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We've even recorded, once they get the horsemanship groups and they begin riding, we've installed a TV out at the barn, and we'll record them and have the ability to watch their rides within minutes. And so it just allows, then as we point out, hey, I noticed, or I'm curious, I wonder, right? Using those words that are safe and get them to open up versus why did you turn your horse that way? Why? And I shut them down. But if I can use those words, I wonder, I'm curious, I noticed. And as they're watching the video, man, they can, it's at a double, it's like doubling it up. Like I see it and I feel it and I can watch it. And it's been really helpful. So we've kind of taken that on this year, and I want to implement that more, but it's really awesome to let them see what they're doing as they're riding. So it improves their fundamentals of riding, but the therapeutic piece, it just adds a whole nother level for them to actually notice and really see, man, I am communicating that way, or I'm not communicating that way, or man, maybe that wasn't as soft as I could have been, or so.
Which is probably a safer way than versus, getting filmed out in the, one of your peers, right?
Yeah.
But so
they want to see it.
Great feedback.
Love it, they'll say, hey, are you guys recording today? Are you videoing today? They love it.
Yeah.
So it does feel safer.
That's what I love about therapy is it's holding up a mirror, to someone, or I've gone to my own and seen a mirror to myself and be like, oh, I do that, like I didn't realize I did, and then being aware of it, and then realizing I don't want to do that anymore, or I can do something different.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do something different.
That self-improvement and breaking out of those negative cycles that we get into.
Sure.
I think one thing I wanted to bring up too is it's not just always like the individual work or the group work. I mean, we do individual therapy sessions with kids. If I have a kid who's really struggling to connect in the community or connect even at equine, or just feels like they need some extra attention or extra love, like down there at the arena, like we do individual sessions, or we might take a kid down and just work on connection, right? Connecting with your horse. With the natural livemanship, there's a lot about, just co-regulation. And so we might do that, right? With a kid who's always feels like they're always in this like kind of hyper arousal state. How do we get them down to like window of tolerance? We've done that.
Even finding like the horse's heartbeat.
Yeah, horse's heartbeat. Your heartbeat.
I love that.
And we have also done a lot of family work, right? I've had some really like just cool sessions with families, bringing families in.
Those are my absolute favorite.
Yes.
The family sessions. Group sessions are great, and individuals are good. Or they're really, really good. The family sessions,
Powerful.
Powerful.
So powerful.
What you can in 90 minutes in a family session. Yeah. That brings up one of my favorite stories that of all times. In 11 years of being at Discovery, we were working with a rad kid. A kid that had been through...
For our listeners, what does that mean?
Excuse me. Reactive attachment disorder. Okay. This kid had been through more orphanages than I can count. And then the same as with the foster homes.
So a lot of trauma.
A lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Not adopted until early teens.
Oh, wow.
Early teens.
That's a rough start.
And so, the reactive attachment disorder definitely was one of the main things that primary therapist in the family was working on. So we set up, this kid had been with us for probably 10 months. They were actually working with Martin, the horse that I've talked so much about today. So we set
I
up
wanna
this.
meet Martin.
You need to meet Martin.
Okay.
Everyone needs to
Next
meet
time I come
Martin. We all need a therapy session with Martin. And so we'd set up this session. I had 3 horses in the arena, and Martin was one of them, and then mom and dad and the student. We just set up a task, set something up in the arena, and ask parents and this kid to guide and direct the horses through it. And I remember mom and dad were both type A. I remember we opened that arena gate and they just were out in the dirt and making plans, making this happen. Wanted to get to it, and it was just their personalities. This kid came into the arena, and I remember whispering to the therapist, this is a small win. For the first session that they are even in the arena with their parents, I'm taking that as a win. But I remember they sat down we had a little mounting block, and they sat down on this on the little mounting block. But they were watching what their parents were doing. They were going back and forth as parents were trying to guide and direct these horses through this pattern. But they weren't saying much. They weren't saying anything. Excuse me. They weren't saying anything. But they were in the arena and they were engaged. But Martin, it took 3 or 4 minutes to go by, and Martin realized this student wasn't out in the arena with their family. And he came over to them, and if I could talk about filming, this is the session I would have wanted to film. He pushed this student off that bench.
No.
And it was
incredible.
It was not, hey, are we?
Could have planned that any better.
So she stands up, and they make eye contact, and they look at each other for 30, 45 seconds, and then the student proceeds to go out and finish the task with the family. And just like every group, we save, that 30, 40 minutes to process in the end and ask questions and bring up what we saw in the arena. And, the opportunity came for me to ask. I said, hey, what was going on? I just replayed what happened. Hey, I noticed Martin came over. I noticed he nudged you. You made eye contact. What was going on? And she said, I want to be out there with my family. I don't know how. Right? I can't get there without Martin. I can't do it without him. I can't make it happen without that team. And that's what they do every day in and day out. They're unbelievable. And I'm really thankful for them, for this job, and the opportunity to be with these kids and work through some really tough things with them. Mm-hmm. And just really thankful for an awesome team of therapists that are there, with me, and this team of horses that they are there for the right reasons, and they want to help, and they want to guide, and they want to teach, and they're in it for the long haul, and I appreciate it.
That's a beautiful story, and I teared up just even envisioning it. You guys have sold me. I'm gonna come down and work with you.
Let's go.
I'm ready to jump back in the arena. It's been a long time.
Do it. Let's do
love
it.
that.
You would sound like you have an incredible team.
Oh, we do. We really do.
You brought some letters that you wanted to share with our listeners. Is there any particular ones you want to read before we end?
Yeah.
Explain what these are.
So Lee talked about 3 different kind of like these 3 tracks, 3 tiers of equine. And so we go from grounds to horsemanship. And then when students get to our phase 3, they can do advanced equine, right? So that might be more trail riding. We are bordered right there on like BLM land. So we have a gate that just goes out to it. So we
Beautiful
can do trail riding.
horse riding land right in your backyard.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And so the kids, if they want to, they can just basically, it's a conversation, right, about how comfortable they feel, how confident they feel, and of course they've or have they kind of mastered some of these fundamentals in a way, right? They're able
So we can keep them safe.
So we can keep them safe, yeah.
Off on the trails, because we canter and we lope out on the trails, and so just knowing that they can keep themselves safe out there.
Yeah. So with these letters, as they're coming into advanced, or even before I guess we do it when they come into advanced. And if we have a student, I think, who's really shown a lot of passion for the equine program, we have them write a letter to their horse as they're leaving or as they're getting into advanced. And so Lee, has a folder full of letters from years on. But I think just some of these, going to read
just
a couple
pieces from the letters,
of them.
not the entire letter.
Yeah, not the entire letter.
Hear it from them.
Yeah, hear it from our students. Equine has been hard for me since I started. Failure has been a constant fear. I was originally afraid Pete, who was one of our horses, would see my failure and know I wasn't enough, but it was never the case. Every hard session I have Pete trying to non-verbally communicate with anything is extremely difficult, but learning how to with an animal is difficult, but somehow it comes into play faster. Pete, you've provided me with a lot of confidence and patience and pushed me into being kind, but also setting boundaries. So that was one.
That's gorgeous.
This one, Jasper. Jasper is one of our horses that is just rock solid. I don't even know how to explain Jasper. He's like this old soul, just safe as could be, safe as safe could be. I mean, just awesome.
Most trustworthy.
Yeah, trustworthy. Loves his job. He loves his job. So Jasper, you've had a huge impact on me. You really changed my perspective on horses. You actually listened to me. I always thought it would be weird to just randomly talk to a horse and they would just stand there, but I can see by your body movement that you listen and care. So again, this kind of goes back to like nonverbal, right? Your ears go up and down and you put your head on my shoulder when you feel sympathetic for me. It makes me so happy every time. You will always be my number one horse. You make me feel so comforted and help me worry less about the outside world.
Yeah, this horse cool. This is one of the horses. He will literally hug them. He will wrap his chin and his nose around, and he'll just embrace you. And Jasper came to us. I don't think he was always treated fairly and always treated kindly. And I think that's why he loves Discovery, and he loves the kids, because they just pour out that like kindness and that deep down like heart, and he feels it and he loves it and he embraces it, and he meets them right there with it. He is definitely my go-to horse for if no one has ever ridden or they've had those traumatic experiences. He is, and like I said, it's their choice who they want to work with. And I will always let them know he's one that will always take care of them. I have utmost confidence in him to take care of anybody that works with him.
At the program I worked at, they rescued a horse that had been out in the field. No one had touched it for a couple years. It was, ribs were showing. It had like skin off its nose. I mean, it was in bad shape, had been through trauma, neglected, abused, and they couldn't even get the horse into the trailer, and getting it out of the trailer, it was just awful. And there were some kids who had also gone through some severe trauma, and they helped rehabilitate this horse. And this horse, if you saw this horse now, would have no idea. Right. It is healthy, strong, it socializes with the other horses just fine, lets kids ride it. I mean, such a cool thing to watch as a therapist, this horse and these kids who had been abused themselves just grow and heal with this horse. So they're powerful creatures. Those of our listeners who may think like, sure, they're just horses. They're not. Like, these are beautiful, powerful, amazing creatures that help people grow and learn and provide safety in a way that I don't think people realize. So therapeutically, they're phenomenal to use.
Change lives.
Oh, absolutely.
They change lives for the better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if you've had a bad experience with a horse, I think you need to come to DRS, and I think you'll change your ways. Yes. Just with the horses, having the right horses, the right people, the right environment to feel safe and to just create a different healing process for you.
Absolutely.
Right. Ladies, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Such a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah, it's cool.
And stay tuned for our listeners. In our next episode, we'll be talking about the Therapeutic Adventure and Outdoor Recreation Program with David Moss. And I'm looking forward to talking to him and his experiences, which I'm sure are just as awesome as yours. So
they are. He got me on a rock once.
That's awesome. Have you gotten him on a horse, though?
No.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
I'll have to talk to him. Thank you again, and Stay tuned.